What happens if a situation arises that you were unprepared for? A situation such as a blizzard, a tornado, or being locked down due to a virus. Put yourself in any possible situation that could arise. Now ask yourself, what would you do? Where would you go? What do you need? Are you ready? Because what if tomorrow? Welcome to the What If Tomorrow podcast. I'm Philip.
And I'm Mark.
And tonight, man, we've got a fun show, kind of a recap of stuff we went through. My wife and I went to over the weekend. It was a lot of fun, very informative, and some amazing knowledge got passed. And I'll share it with you in a second. But first things first, we're going to play our little ad Mark put together.
Hey, this is Mark with What If Tomorrow and What If Tomorrow on the Fringe. Be sure to check out our website, whatiftomorrowmedia.com. And look at our cool merch. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, posters, and more. Our affiliates are Duke Cannon, EMP Shield, My Patriot Supply, and Conflicted the Game. Or check out buymeacoffee.com/whatiftomorrow and buy us a coffee. And as always, be sure to like, comment, and share on both Facebook and YouTube. It helps get our content out to others and help our channel grow. Now on with the show.
All right, man. We had, like I said, we had an amazing weekend. My wife and I did. Mark and I talked last night. I told him, man, next year you guys got to go.
Man.
So.
He was so excited, folks. It was nice. It was cool.
Yeah, I was texting him. You know, he was at work. I was texting him. But it was so much fun. I mean, the vibe, the general vibe of the place was so laid back. And everybody was locked on. And where we went was the Okie Homesteading Expo. It was down in Pryor, Oklahoma. Let me see real quick. And it was a 2-day event. And my wife and I, we wound up going just Friday because we had previous commitment. We got to meet some pretty cool YouTubers. I don't know if you guys are in this space or you watch the Homesteaders on YouTube. We got to meet Off the Grid with Doug and Stacy. You know, and you see I'm sporting the What If Tomorrow shirt. You know, I mean, I got to promote the brand. You know, but what was funny was all the people that were there. You know, they were either small time YouTubers or kind of like us, I guess. Small time YouTubers, or they had their own. They were content producers, a lot like us. You know, everybody was sporting their stuff, and that was expected. You know, I mean, because people are trying to get into this space. But beside the point, I mean, nobody pointed it out and all that, and it was surreal to me. I mean, you guys hear about a lot of this negative stuff that we talk about. I hate being negative, but we're trying to keep you all informed. That way you can make your own decisions and make educated decisions at that. I mean, if you can call what we do education. You know, really what we try to do is plant that seed to make you think about it, to do your own research and grow from there, because I'm a firm believer in this area. You need to grow. But the atmosphere, like I said, was so surreal. They opened it up with, I don't know, I'm guessing probably 10 years old tops, girl playing the national anthem on her violin. And just the patriotism that I saw there. I saw one dad correcting his children because they were just standing there. I saw one dad lean over and have them put their hands over their hearts. And I'm a people watcher. No matter where I'm at, I watch people. But the patriotism and the pride that was there was refreshing and hopeful. And then shortly after that, or right after that, they had a pastor come up and pray over the event, which was something you don't see anymore, really, for anything. And nobody got offended because they didn't believe, or it was just one of those things. It was America, the America I know and love.
It's still out there, man.
It absolutely is. And it gave me hope. And some other YouTubers, we had VW Farms. They're out of Arkansas. Super cool people. We went to their first class, or their little class they hosted was, I want to say, how to make money off your homestead. It was a really informative class. Good things to know. Good things my wife and I hadn't thought about here at our place, and because we don't want to do this. We do want to do this to help our family, help our friends. But if we can make something off of it to return to us for what we're putting into it, time, money, because this spring especially, we've put a lot of time into our home. Our products, our garden, our animals, and making the place better, more convenient, just trying to improve the place so we can, I guess, homestead. And I was talking to a guy at work today, and he's like, "You can do that in Kansas? You can homestead?" Yes, but in a way it's taken on a different connotation, because it's not necessarily just going and basically going to a piece of property that nobody owns and starting to homestead it or whatever. It is become something that people are basically trying to become self-sufficient. And I'm a firm believer, and I've talked to my wife about this, and I think I've talked to you about this a little bit, Mark, but I'm a firm believer that if people start growing their own food or producing their own food in some way, some form, somehow, that the system collapses.
Our money's not propping it up anymore.
Right. Like Doug and Stacy, they produce 90% of their food. That's what these people do. And they're awesome people. They were so informative on building a homestead on a budget. A lot of the classes that we attended revolved around money, new ideas to learn new skills. My wife, she attended a goat class because she's interested in getting goats. And I told her, so let's finish up all these other irons that we have in the fire before we proceed with goats. Because I've got so many irons in the fire right now, it's hard to keep up. And I personally, I overextend myself. I plan more out of the day than what I can get done. And then I get mad because I didn't get it done. And I've had this conversation with my wife. I'm like, I don't feel like we got crap done today. My wife's like, but we did. We got a lot of stuff done today. Why do you feel that way? I said, because I didn't get everything done I wanted to get done. And that's my issue. It has nothing to do with anything or anyone, but that's an issue that I have is I bite off more than I can chew, and I try to cram it all into one day. Because we work a lot of overtime, and I'm trying to get all this stuff done. Time's wasting. We're late on the gardening season. We still have some things to get planted. We've got hogs now. Our chickens, we've got plans for those. We got to build another run, and I'm thinking about building a chicken tractor and other stuff like that.
You're making me tired just listening to you. You really are, man.
But I also have come to realize I can't do it all in one day or all in one weekend. We have to pace ourselves, and that's kind of why. And like I said, we have a bad habit, my wife and I, of biting off more than we can chew. But it hasn't been so bad that we can't chew long enough to swallow it. It just takes a little longer. But with this conference, Mark, you and I have talked for the past year since we really stood up and got back going again. We've talked about building your community.
Absolutely.
That's what this place was. It was a huge community. Everybody. I mean, I can't remember her name, and I'll never remember it. I promise you.
Yeah.
But we sat there and talked like we'd known each other forever. I'm not an outgoing person, no matter what you think from the show or anything like that. I'm not. I'm a very introverted person. And my wife pointed it out to people that first class with the VW Farms. We were, we were in a show barn. They had 3 different venues, and 2 were in the show barns, and 1 was in the main venue. It was air conditioned, all that. And the first class was in one of the show rings. They had set up chairs, and there were bleachers on the outside. And I'm sitting down. I'm like, I don't like being in a crowd. And I'm sitting there looking at a place to sit, and there's people everywhere. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go sit on the bleachers. And we walked by one of the volunteers that were working there. I said, can we go sit on the bleachers? Is that all right? Do you guys have a problem with that? And she's like, no, not at all. My wife's like, he don't like being in the crowd.
He really is not as social as he seems on the show, folks. It took him almost a year to say more than 5 words to me when we first met.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm a people watcher. I watch people before I even approach and talk to them. And I was more outgoing last Friday than I think I'd been in a long time. I was talking to people, going up and just chatting with people. There was one guy there, he was selling, and it blew my mind. I don't know if I told you this last night when we were talking or not, but he had a bunch of quail eggs for sale. I was like, man, there's common ground. I can go talk to somebody. I'm trying to force myself to get out of my shell, if that makes any sense.
You've been doing a lot better the last 3 years.
This has helped. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, you really have.
But, I was like, man, there's a common ground. I can go talk to the guy. So I walked up and talked to him. We were kind of talking about quail and this and that. And he's like, yeah, he said, I get 3,000 eggs a day. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a ton of eggs. I said, so do you have any idea of how many birds that you have? He's like, I don't have a clue.
Lots. That's the number. Lots.
I mean, I feel lucky to get 10 a day out of my group, but I've only got 30 some birds.
I would be boiling and pickling them things all day long. I love pickled quail eggs.
Well, you know what, man, I'm gonna have to bring you some because we got a whole bunch. And on the counter,
we don't earn any friends out there in the shop because
yeah, I don't have to work with you. So.
Well, all right.
But it is, Sarah. It is. But it was an amazing event. Like I said, very informative. And some of these things, man, I was going to share some, but we may break down to each of them. Like the homesteading on a budget class, that's with Doug and Stacy. And basically they were trying to tell everybody to think outside the box. You have to. I mean, their story, and I walked up to him, and I was sporting my What If Tomorrow shirt, and I walked up to him, my wife, because there was an aquaponics class, and I've been interested in aquaponics for a long time, and there was a class. I was like, man, I'll go check this out. My wife will check the goat class out, and I get over there for the first, at the starting time, there was nobody there, so I'm like, well, is this class happening? So I walked around a little bit, looked at some vendor stuff, because there's tons of vendors there with all sorts of natural this and honey and just all sorts of stuff. And so I walked back, and there's a guy up there talking on the stage, and he's talking about he was trying to figure out how much hay to feed his cattle, last summer when it was dry and all that. And I was like, man, this isn't what I was really interested in. I don't really care about your hay. I don't. That's not what I want to learn. So I walked away. You know, I was like, well, heck with it, you know. So I went around and well, I approached Doug. And you know, there's a line of people, you know, they're popular YouTubers. I think they have like 1.5 million subscribers. So there's a lot of people that know who they are. And I walked up to him, shook his hand, and said, "Hey, you know," introduced myself. I was like, "Man, I love your show." And he looked down at my shirt and he said, "What if tomorrow?" I said, "Man, the things we could talk about." And I was like, "Well, it's my buddy and I's podcast." He said, "You should call me, or you should email me." Hey, what's up, Will? No baby yet? He said, "What's shaking, everybody? Happy Monday to all." Will's going to be a dad soon if he hadn't become one already. So, or a dad again, I should say.
Fantastic.
Yeah, they do, Willie. But it was just, and we got to talking a little bit. Then he kind of got sidetracked with other people, and fair enough. I wasn't offended that he went to talk to other people that were willing to talk to him. It didn't bother me a bit. So basically, anytime, right, man? He said, "Not yet, 2 weeks or less." Well, we're rooting for you, man. Rooting for you and Mama.
That baby's going to be born with a full head of beard.
Yeah, man, I'm happy for you, man. I hope everything comes out okay and everybody's healthy. So that's what matters.
Amen, brother.
But yeah, it was cool. And like I said, the classes were extremely informative. One of the other classes we attended was by the Max. They're another YouTube family. And they were talking on how to build your pantry or how to start a pantry and things like that.
I'm very interested in that one.
It was extremely interesting because he was talking about things that I hadn't thought of. You know, we talk a lot about food storage and this and that. He broke it down to being more specific to where, you know, sure. I mean, you know, you have your freeze dried foods, you can dehydrate all that, but he's like, you need to do it multifaceted. You need to have several different avenues on storage, to where if one fails, you know, say all your freeze dried stuff fails, maybe it gets a tear in a bag or something like that, and it goes bad. You don't lose all that food. You just lose that little bit that you have stored in that way. Or say your canning or whatever doesn't take, and all that food spoils. You don't lose that. You know, you lose that little bit, but you don't lose the rest of your storage. And I was like, you know, that is a great idea.
Yeah, I want to look into that.
You know, it was just, and I can't say it enough. If you guys are in the area, or even if you're not, I mean, they're planning, they're already planning next year's, and it was put on by, I can't remember the names of the YouTubers. It was Keeping It Dutch. He's a homesteader on YouTube. And there's a couple of other, my wife could tell you, she watches more of the homesteading things than I do. There's a few that I watch and a few that I really enjoy, but they put this on. They started last year, had one day, and the outpouring was amazing. So they decided to do 2 days this year. And it cost us $25 a piece to get in. But the information we got, the information that we got, yes, Hidden Heights Farm and Keeping It Dutch. Thank you. That's my wife. And but the information that was there, and all the different classes, there were some private classes you had to pay extra for, like how to butcher a hog. Stacy from Doug and Stacy did, I think, fermenting, on how to ferment different types of foods and stuff like that for healthy, you know, for more healthy foods. She's into, I think, holistic medicine, I think. You know, and you could pay extra to go to those classes, which is good. I mean, people need to, if they want to learn something, I mean, sure, there's free ways to do it, but if you're actually getting hands-on or one-on-one, with a small class or whatever, I think it's well
Those
worth it.
supplies weren't free. I mean, I
Right.
get it. I get it.
Right. You pay for time and you pay for supplies. And it's a business, but they had all that stuff going. There was one in where they were doing the aquaponics at the first class. They were actually butchering a hog, and I can't for the life of me remember what the name of it was. They're YouTubers. They do hunting and butcher and cook and all that. And they were kind of going along that line, teaching that course on how to basically butcher game meat. Like I said, they were doing a whole hog, and my wife also put on there in the comments that they were doing a whole hog. He can talk about different cuts, and I didn't watch the whole class, but walking through there because the bathroom was over there, and the VW farms and stuff were over there in that area. But we walked through, and I kind of sat and watched a little bit here and there. Well, later on, by the end of the show, by the end of the day, they were showing how to cook and prepare the meat.
Nice.
It was cool. I mean, it really was. And the more I thought about it and how it relates to what we're doing, is it's one and the same. Like we were talking last night. Mark and I had a meeting last night on StreamYard, just kind of talking about the show and what we wanted to do with it. Kind of take a step back because we hadn't done it in a while. Yeah, how to cure the meat. Yeah. And kind of take a step back and look at how things are going and what we want to do. And I think we've got some good ideas. It's just we're starting. We need to start to execute.
I have some news on that later too.
Okay, great. But what my thoughts were, this is really one and the same. This is what we're trying to get the point across. Because the first thing you think about preppers is these guys are nuts. They're gun nuts. They're out living in the woods. They're, ready to take up arms and all this. That's not the case. Most people that are into preparedness, which I would rather call them, are people like us. It's not a crazy thing. It's not a crazy.
Just don't want to be caught flat-footed. I mean,
right.
Most emergencies are not going to last over a few weeks at most.
Right.
Most people will be fine having a few weeks worth of stuff put away. But in the event that that's not the case, you need to have a backup plan.
Right. I mean, I don't know. When you hear prepper, like I said, I mean, you think about bug out bags and all this stuff. I'm going to bug out. Where are these people going to go?
Yeah.
How many people? And as many as you all know, if you listen to the show, I'm a huge Second Amendment guy. Huge Second Amendment guy.
Same.
And years ago, me and some other guys were discussing if the government came to try to take everybody's guns. I'm trying to kind of temper what I'm saying with YouTube and all that, but this guy, well, they'll have to pry it from my cold dead hands. The old cliche. And I looked him dead in the eye. I said, "Do you mean that?" And he's like, "Well, probably not." I said, "No, why say it?" And I think it's kind of the same thing. You have all these people, all just beans and bullets and Band-Aids and all that. Well, do you mean it? Sure, all of those things have a place in preparedness. Every single one of them do.
They can't be your entire focus, though.
But for one, you have to mean it. You have to make a plan. And in all honesty, that's something that I learned over the weekend. And I got thinking about it. I said, yes, we are into preparedness. My wife and I are. I mean, hopefully you guys are that are listening in some form. I'm not saying you got to go all out and buy 100,000 acres out in the middle of Nevada or whatever,
Although
but
that sounds fantastic, and if
that
you have
does
room, I would like to
not,
move.
not really Nevada. I mean, I take Alaska. I think Alaska would be great. Somewhere like that, Idaho.
I want one of those powder bunkers up north.
Yeah, that'd be cool up in South Dakota. Yeah, those bunkers would be cool. But it's the intent behind it. How many, if you've started your preparations, and if you're listening or watching this after we post it, comment below on it. I want to see. I kind of do a poll, so to speak, for people who watch it. How many actually have a plan, a preparedness plan? Where are you at in your plan? This is just food for thought for you guys. This is what kind of put things in perspective for me, because
Most
I got to
people aren't
thinking
as far
about it.
along as they think they need to be.
Right. But this is what put things in perspective for me. It was last Friday. One of the classes, plan it out. And I got to think, so do we really have a plan, or are we just trying to get everything done and we're forgetting things? And that's the case for us. We're trying to get everything done that we know we believe needs to get done. And we're scrambling. It feels like a scramble. And then I stop and look. I'm like, crap, I forgot to do this. I forgot to do that. We need to get this done. It's chaos. And this is my experience. Okay. This isn't pointed at anybody else. This is for me. But it's chaotic. And I realize it's time to step back, take a breath, and understand where we need to go and what we're doing this for. And I would recommend everybody, if you're in this space, or if you have the idea that you want to get started, or if you've already started and you don't know where to go next, make that plan. Figure out where you want to go and make the plan to get there. If you want a year's worth of food, think about how much that entails, roughly how many calories that is, because you need to really kind of put calories to the paper to understand how much you can have to survive off that year worth of food. Just food for thought, because if like I have 4 people living in my house right now. I have 2 older sons. If something were to happen, I would drive personally and go drag them home as long as I could. So I have to plan for 6 people minimum in my household and plan a year's worth of food for a minimum of 6 people. Now, personally, I've said it many times on here, because you hear the cliche, well, I'm coming over to your house. And, for the longest time, no, you're not, I don't think I could turn people away. I'm not that. That's not me. So I have to plan extra. If your community, it's something else to think about. If you have community members like come to your place to help out, how are you going to sustain them? I'm not saying that you have to take that responsibility on for your entire group. If you have a group, they should be taking steps to put their preps in place. But you can also plan for them. There's many ways to do it, but that's just something that really set with me through one of these classes was plan. And I was like, and I started thinking, that self-introspection. Do we really have a plan? And I was like, no, really, we don't. We know what we want to get done. Do what?
I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got some stuff that we're working on, but we've not really sit down and made a plan. Really need to sit down and make at least a financial plan for it.
Right.
How are we going to pay for all this? What are we going to put it? How are we going to store it? Where are we going to store it?
Right.
Because I can't farm out here. I've got lead in the ground.
Right. It's like I said, and I'm not trying to beat anybody up, nothing like that. I'm just trying to ask you to look in on yourself and do some introspection and figure out where you want to go with this. If you're into preparedness, and I
Everybody needs to do
understand,
it.
yeah, I fully 100% understand if you're on a fixed income, especially with inflation going crazy like it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, everybody's dollars don't go as far as they did 2-3 years ago.
No, they sure don't.
So people are struggling to make ends meet. I understand that. But again, you've heard us say it a few times here and there. If you go to the store and buy a box of mac and cheese, buy an extra one, store it. Have that preparation, I mean, we talk a lot about food preparation or preparedness, and especially in storage of food, because you got to have food.
Yeah, you
That's
gotta
a
have food,
necessity.
gotta have water.
You got to have it. You got to have water. You got to figure out a plan for water. Because my
That I
wife
do
and
have covered.
right, yeah. Right now, something to think about, y'all. How many? I know a lot of people have central heat and air, but how many people have window units that leak water? The condenser and all that stuff, when it gets water. I remember as a kid, my grandparents had a window unit. Yeah, Tim, and you're absolutely right. Tim said a $20 bill is like $1 now. Absolutely,
That's
it is.
about right. That actually.
But think about different ways to save water. Doug and Stacy, if you guys haven't watched them, and I'm gonna reach out to him probably tomorrow and send him an email about try to get him on here, because his story is great. And he's an entertainer. He really is. But think of the different ways that you can add water to your food storage. Water for you. If you have a garden, water for your garden. If you have pets or you're raising animals, how are you going to store water for them? Because like us, I mean, sure, we have physical food storage. Okay. We do. Absolutely do. Probably not as much as we want, but we do. But I have animals now. Where am I going to get my water for that if that fails? Or if that infrastructure fails, with the water, the government comes down. I mean, the government's always the bad guy. We all know this. But what happens, if they're trying to force people off their land and they shut your water off? How are you going to stay there? How are you going to, or are you going to, give in or whatever? And if that's what you choose to do, that's what you choose to do. I'm not going to judge you. I mean, people have to survive. I mean, people have a survival instinct for that reason. But it's just food for thought, that the whole planning. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned Friday is planning.
Yeah. And a lot of that stuff that you learn can be done on a big scale or as small a scale as you want.
Yes.
Speaking of big scale, I've been wanting to show you a picture that I downloaded over the weekend because I know you're into the aquaponics.
Yeah.
This is something that they are doing in Indonesia. It's called fish, rice,
Yeah.
rice and fish culture. They turn all these fish loose in their rice paddies, and it's increased the yield of the rice paddies, and then the fish have been multiplying, and they've got all these fish to eat.
Yeah, that's aquaponics as a whole.
Yeah, this is just large scale outdoor aquaponics,
Absolutely.
and it's marvelous. It's working well.
Yeah. And we actually stopped at their booth. The guy that was supposed to do the aquaponics talk, I'm guessing he did because I didn't stick around for it. He lost my interest, and I was like, I can go find something else. I actually set in on. I gotta download it real quick. I think I don't know if my wife shared it to the YouTube channel group, the Night Acres community over on Facebook. But we're sitting there. I was like, you know what? I went and talked to Doug for a few minutes, and then I went back in there and sat with my wife for a minute while they're talking about the goats and all that. I mean, I'm not personally interested in them. My wife is. She wants them. But the lady, they pulled a goat up and put it on the milking stand and all that. And they asked, well, who wants to milk a goat? My wife's sitting there like a little kid. I was like, I told her, I said, just go. You know you want to, just go. So she did.
I can actually picture it.
But it was cool because there were little kids there. There were, younger adults, and there were older people. All they just went up there to do it. Nobody judged anybody. It's like, man, this is cool, I mean, and then some people tried it. Yeah, the lady said she had, I can't remember the names of them, but she said she had somebody go out to their farm and pay them to milk some goats, and this guy literally shot it in his mouth from the goat itself. And she's like, if you want to do that, go for it. I don't care. She said that was on his bucket list. He wanted to do that, drink it directly from the goat. I was like, okay, whatever,
If you got cats, they'll do it too. They'll catch it in midair.
Yeah. No, it was a great experience. It was a wonderful event. Like I said, there was nothing bad about it. It was a family friendly. I mean, there were all sorts of, they had this family that had a train of kids. I mean, a whole bunch of them.
They really need to learn self-sufficiency amongst other things.
Yes, sir.
Because how are you going to feed all those kids? That just made my pocketbook ache.
Yeah. My wife, she said, I did not do that. I know you didn't. I didn't say you did. But it was just a lot of fun. It was a great experience. I would recommend anybody, if you're available next year, keep an eye out on it. The Okie Homesteading Expo. I would recommend anybody to go to it because there's so much information. I think next year we're going to shoot to do both days.
That
just because there's
amazing, actually.
Yeah, there's so much information being passed, and for us, it's only like 70 miles. It's like driving from here to Tulsa, except it's more back roads, old highways and all that.
So more fun.
Yeah. Until you get 2-lane roads and you get behind this guy doing 30.
Me?
Huh?
Me? Chris says I can drive like a grandpa, so I got the hat for it.
But no, there was so much. Let's see, just real quick, on the homesteading, and I wanted to touch on homesteading tonight because in essence, that's preparedness.
Really, it is.
And I really want to and like you and I were talking last night, I want to take that stigma away from being a prepper. And that's something that we talked about, last night. And I personally, I think it's a great idea to start here. We have a good start. We have a good base. We've been nearly 3 years into this.
Yeah.
And we've up and down and all this stuff. And to let everybody else know, we're going to start expanding. We're looking at some things. I don't think we're ready to announce yet, but
Not
hopefully
quite.
coming soon. For us, and it's a start, and we're looking at some other things for our area. And I hope that you guys listening will get involved with us. Even if you volunteer, if you want. More to come on that later. But I'm excited about some new changes. Mark and I think we're discussing a couple different projects that we're not ready to announce yet. So it'll be fun. It'll be challenging, but I think we can pull it off.
I think we can.
Yeah.
Nothing else, we can wing it. We've both learned
absolutely
learned the art of winging it with minimal information.
Yeah, we're pretty good at we've gotten pretty good at that. But there were so many different lessons that Doug and Stacy taught. I'll run down a few of these things they talked about. You got to have the commitment. And I think that's in life. Any venture that you set out on, you have to be committed to it. If you're not, you're going to fail. I mean, that's just a lot of wisdom right there. You have to be committed to it. And they talked about on the homestead is recycle everything. And I do that a lot out here. I repurpose stuff. We have an old pool frame that we're going to turn into a chicken run. Different things like that. Find a mentor. That is invaluable. If you know somebody that knows something that you don't and you want to learn that, talk to them. Offer to help them.
Chances are they're happy to share.
Yeah. Yeah. If it comes down to it, offer to pay them. Hey, can you teach me this? I'll pay you to do it. I'll pay you to teach me or whatever. Find a mentor. And that's amazing. That's great in life. That's great life advice to become successful. Is to have that mentor, to show you the ins and the outs and to help out and teach.
Be prepared to mentor others, I think.
Is
a good thing as well.
Let's see. Here's a big one. And my wife and I have talked about this, and eventually we want to get there, but for the homesteading portion, I mean, you can't do it if just on general preparedness, you can't do this. But for homesteading, they're talking break away from the store as much as you possibly can. I think they've been doing this for 14 or 15 years. I don't want to go into their story so we can get them on, but they produce 90% of their own food.
So like our grandparents did.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to. And his mentors were the Amish. They taught him how to work the land. They taught him, because he said he'd never built anything before they sold everything and bought this plot of land they have. Said he lived in a tent for 90 days, him and the dogs. Lived in a tent for the 90 days while he was building his house. It was a log cabin he built. Went from something like 3,000 square foot down to like 900 square feet. They have solar power. They don't have like electric utilities. They use a composting toilet. I mean, things you're like, oh, what the heck? I want to do that. Where do you think this is going? And again, that's something else that stood out to me. Am I saying I'm going to jump out and go buy a composting toilet? No, I'm not. But what are you going to do if the sewer goes down, especially if you live in town?
Yeah.
You could turn that compost. You could compost your own waste. My wife and I here, as long as we can flush our toilets, we have a lagoon. It just flushes it out there, and it's good.
By the way, you can turn that lagoon into a rice paddy.
Yeah.
Because that's how they fertilize rice fields.
Yeah. I'm just not going to crawl in there and plant.
I mean, you might just have to, man. You might just have to. That's what kids are for.
Waders. Yeah, I'll put them in some hip waders and floaties. We'll call it good.
There you
go. But it's thinking outside the box that is going to get you through really any situation, especially a preparedness situation. Because if you are in a situation to where you have to rely on your preps, it's not life as we know it.
No, it's going to be bad news.
Even if it's for, like in 2007 here during the flood, that wasn't life as we knew it. It disrupted everything. Several years ago when that chemical plant blew up in Neodesha, that was the upriver.
Yep.
During Thanksgiving week or during Thanksgiving weekend.
Nobody had drinking water. You couldn't shower. You couldn't do nothing.
No.
Wasn't safe. Your water would burn.
Yeah. You had to think outside the box and figure out, there's a spring down the road a couple miles from us. So we went down and loaded up on spring water. So if you're in a preparedness situation, it's already not life as you know it. It's not going to be comfortable. But through preparedness, you can make it more comfortable.
You can make it livable.
Right. And if you have enough, I can promise you your comfort level is going to be a little bit more than somebody that doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully, we're staying a little bit upbeat tonight. We're not trying to go down to the dark paths that we've been down. And I feel like it is. I feel like it's a whole different breath of fresh air, I think. But this show put a lot of things in perspective for me, like I've said. The break away from the store thing, unless you're on a homestead and producing your own food, if you can grow a garden or put away your own grocery, grow your own food and can it, that's saving you a ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
It's like $2-3 for a pouch of seeds that can grow you a ton of food. Learn to preserve it. If you don't know how, you have YouTube, you may know people that do. It's the information's there.
Yeah. And look, canning is not hard. Our grandparents did it. People with no education whatsoever have done it. It's not hard up here. There's a lot of hard work. I remember as a kid, we would put up green beans, tomatoes, pickles, peppers, and whatnot every summer. And then by the time summer rolled around again, we still had some left.
Yeah.
We hardly ever had to buy those things, until we stopped doing it.
If you have a deep freeze, you can freeze dry your own food without a freeze dryer.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I will announce is Mark and I are decided we're going to actually start producing YouTube videos. Kind of back when we first started the channel, we're going to go back to producing our own video, our videos, teaching things and I think we're going to do, I think I'm going to do a freeze drying video on how to do it with your your freezer, your deep freeze. So if you have a deep freeze, you can freeze dry it, whether it be meat. But I think they say vegetables are best to start with. So it's just, learning things, learning these skills and all that. Sure, you can buy a freeze dryer if you can afford it, but I'm sitting there looking at it right now. The Harvest Right 4-tray medium freeze dryer is almost $3,000.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah.
I'll get out.
And I don't know very many people that have $3,000 just sitting around that they don't have for somewhere else.
And you don't have to buy a dehydrator. You can use your oven.
You can. Yep.
Works
One thing I
fine.
think one thing I want to do is also, since we're getting pigs, or we've already got pigs, but since we're going to start producing our pigs, I'm going to build a smokehouse and learn how to smoke cure meat. I mean, I have a smoker. I mean, an electric smoker.
I want to do that too. Please let me learn
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, but I think we're going to actually cure our own meat for storage.
That is something my family did not do. We took all of our animals to a locker and we kept them in a locker in town.
Yeah.
And they took care of all that. But I would love to learn how to do a smokehouse.
Yeah. I mean, I got to build it, but that's something on our list.
I have sweat equity, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll take much to build.
You. No, it won't.
But it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And I have the perfect place picked out for it. So
excellent.
It's just doing it. Because I believe, I was talking to a guy tonight, all of these skills that people have forgotten used to be a way of life. Growing your own garden, curing your own meat, butchering your own meat, preserving your food for the next year. Our garden is taking off right now. It really is. I mean, we've got so many cucumber blooms. Tomatoes are starting to bloom. Our potatoes are blowing up. Our corn is skyrocketing. We planted. Well, we got a little bit late over the weekend, or over this planting season. There's some stuff that we still have yet to get in. Some of it we're not extremely worried about. But we planted corn, just regular sweet corn. And we're going to do that, what they call the Three Sisters. I mean, if you're familiar with it, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, well, I'm going to explain it to you. The Three Sisters is the way the Native Americans used to plant. And it was corn, string beans, and squash. And they would plant the corn. It would sprout. They'd plant their beans. It would sprout. Then they'd plant their squash to be a ground cover. Well, when that corn grows, and if you don't know, corn grows super fast. It gets tall fast.
And super tall.
And, well, the string beans, you don't want to buy the bush beans. The string beans will climb those corn stalks. And they will actually add nitrogen to the soil, which in turn will help the corn get better. It's like a trifecta. Like I said, the squash makes a ground cover.
Keeps the moisture in.
Keep the moisture in to keep the weeds out. It's like a symbiosis. And so we're trying that this year. So I had to go back and replant some corn because some of them didn't come up. I mean, and that's typical when you plant. Some of your seeds won't come up. That's just the way it goes.
Right.
So we went through and replanted, and this was Memorial Day. So a week ago today. So I planted the extra corn, and we planted beans. And then we got the rest of our squash out. And my wife started those in the greenhouse, which I think we've lost one plant, but one out of, I don't know, 950. I don't know how many she planted, but she planted a bunch. Got all that in, and the beans and the corn, by Friday had popped and had come to the ground. It's been wet enough to be able to do that. So we're going to have a ton of green beans, ton of corn. We've got some more corn to plant, but it's called dent corn, and we'll let it dry so we can make our own cornmeal. And then we'll plant some popcorn just because it's something to do. But it's learning little things like that. Learn what plants work the best together. Like we've planted tomatoes and basil together because basil actually helps out the tomatoes by keeping bugs away, but it also adds flavor to the tomatoes. Yeah, and that's the whole permaculture thing. I mean, if you guys remember Joe on here a month or so ago, a couple months ago, I guess. That's what he's talking about. Finding things that work together. And all that information's out there. If you have pests, find another plant that will attract their predators, the things that will eat them, ladybugs and dragonflies and all that good stuff. It's kind of a natural pesticide. And they also say, if you have aphids or something on one of your plants, sacrifice that plant. Let them focus on that plant so they'll stay away from your other ones. Which it's not a bad thing, but there is natural pesticides as well. And we've got some of that's like some kind of fish oil or something you spray on your plants and it'll, I guess, keep them away or whatever. But there's so many different options.
Oh yeah.
So many things you can do, so many things you can learn. It's been hot, but I'm actually at the point now where I enjoy being out there, just kind of seeing things. We were sitting there last night. We recorded a video for our other channel last night, and I was like, man, I really like sitting out here because in the evening it's kind of peaceful. The sun was starting to set. It was peaceful, and we were just sitting there and just kind of looking over our garden because our garden is 1,000 times better than any garden we've had, just using the permaculture techniques we learned from the Jeff Lawton videos. And everything's doing great, minus a couple plants here or there. But a lot of them we kind of waited a little. I mean, we didn't get them in the ground in time, so they're struggling to recover. But just most of them have recovered and are starting to grow better.
Nice.
And that's on us. I mean, we should have had them in the ground, but the weather's just been crazy.
It has been kind of weird weather.
I mean, if you're not in southeastern Kansas or in Kansas, most of the storms that we get come from either the southeast or the north, or southwest or the northwest. Most storms we get this year, the storms that we've gotten, and thank God we've gotten rain, but most of the storms we've gotten are coming from the southeast. It's just weird.
Weird. I mean,
You don't really,
like, what?
yeah, you really don't see that. I mean, like Wichita today got hit pretty hard. My son, he called me. He's in college up there, and he called me and says, "Is it raining down there, Dad?" Wichita is like 2 hours from us. It's like a little over 100 miles. And he asked, "Is it raining? Is it storming down there?" It's like, no, it's not. He said, "Man, it is hailing and wind. We're on a tornado watch." And I said, "Well, welcome to Wichita. I mean, Wichita is always like ground zero."
It really is. It really is. I grew up over there. In fact, the town I grew up in is famous for being completely destroyed in the 1950s. So,
Yeah. I mean, but we all know the weather, and it's weird. It really is. It was colder than normal up until even the first part of May. We're wearing jackets, and rarely do you ever do that.
oh yeah,
And then it just turned, and it's not really been terribly hot yet.
it's been
We've
humid.
been in the 80s. Yeah, it's been a humid sucker here the last couple weeks. But that's another thing you can think about in your preparedness. Understand your weather, understand how it's working. And right now it's crazy. I don't know how the system's working, but it seems like they're always coming from the southeast.
Yeah, I mean, my entire life, if somebody tells me there's a storm coming, I've walked out the door and turned to see where it's coming from because I know where they come from. I know the storm tracks.
Right.
And it's just been totally
Bass backwards.
Bass backwards. Yes, bass backwards is the PC.
Yeah. And it's weird. I mean, this is what the one that hit us Saturday. I was like, man, that's just crazy.
Oh, and it
It's
pounded
crazy.
us too.
Yeah, I mean, my brother, he lives, I don't know, 5-6 miles from me. And he said they got like an inch and an eighth of rain.
Yeah, it was totally going the
And
wrong direction. We're going, oh,
it
what
was,
the
and
hell?
it blew up because we had a fishing derby for our kids through work Saturday morning, and we went out there, had a blast. You know, my youngest son, he got 2 trophies. He got the biggest fish and the most fish, and won him a new fishing pole. And
Ooh.
my daughter was mad because she didn't win anything, and you know, like most kids are. And I had to explain to her, you know, because right away, yeah, my wife said we got all that rain in like 30 minutes. Right away, the cast out and bam, got a fish. Bam, cast out, got a fish. My daughter, and it was really nice catfish, and it was way bigger than the one Caleb caught. You know, my son, and put it on the stringer because you had to check everything in by 11:15, and it started at 8:30, and had 2 really nice channel on there. I was going to go check them. You know, I was going to let them build up because we were a little ways away from the check-in station. I was like, well, instead of making a trip back and forth, you know, just throw them all on a stringer, take them up there. And I was doing something. My wife was doing something, trying to get poles worked or something like that. And my daughter's like, I'm going to pet the fish. I'm going to touch the fish. And we said, no, just leave them alone because we had the stringer just tied to a rock. And I turned around and looked, and the last thing I saw was that stringer going out in the water with 2 nice fish on it. Lost them both.
No.
Couldn't get them. You know, and I told her, I said, you know, you would have won the biggest fish had you have not messed with your fish. So that was hopefully a lesson learned for her.
Right.
She was mad and rightfully so. But, you know, I think overall they had a good time. You know, they had free donuts and juice and all that stuff. So the kids, she ate up the donuts.
I thought that was going totally somewhere else because when I was a kid, I lost a 20-pound channel cat to a freaking turtle.
Yeah.
All I got back was the head.
I believe it. Yeah, we had one here a while back, and it's been several years ago. My 19-year-old, he wasn't very old. He was 7, 8 years old. And we went, and there was one had on the stringer, and he was down there chewing on his face, you know, because it was free food. I mean, it ain't going to do nothing. But yeah, I got away, and, you know, my son, he cleaned up, and, you know, he got a couple trophies for it. And he was trying to brag, and we had to kind of get onto him for that because, you know, don't be bragging, you know, be proud you did a good job, but just don't need to brag about it.
Right.
And, you know, just lessons learned from being kids. But no, folks, I mean, overall, just to kind of circle back around, make sure you make a plan. I think it will help myself. I think it will help everybody. Make a plan of what you want to do and set goals of when you want to have it done. Yeah, my wife, she said right at the end, we had a big catfish on again, and it snapped her line. Yeah. But no, make sure you're making a plan. You know, set goals of when you want to have this plan done. Obviously life happens and sometimes you can't achieve that by that time, but it's a good thing to shoot for. A couple other words of advice, and I'm guilty of it. I kind of looked at my wife when they said this, is don't be, well, I can't read my writing.
Hung out with me too long.
But don't be the person that leaves things unfinished. Don't be that person. You know, and he had a really good point. He said, what happens if something happens to me and I have all these projects unfinished? She's going to have to either learn how to do it, take time out of her schedule to finish it, or pay somebody. Either way, it's going to cost her. It makes sense to me.
It does. It does.
I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. And they said, master one thing at a time. If you're working on a project or whatever, if you're trying to learn something, master that one thing at a time. Move on to your next one once you've got it figured out, and you can move on. Kind of like podcasting. I mean, we went many different ways since we started trying to get new ideas, and I think we overextended ourselves, and we did. And I'm thankful we met up last night and kind of refocused and got some new ideas going. And like I said, there'll be more on that later. But it's a huge piece of advice, and not just preparedness, but in life. Master one thing at a time. Don't overextend yourself. Instead of being that jack of all trades and master of none, because you can always, especially with social media nowadays, you can find somebody that's a master of something else. You can have more than one mentor as well. And the biggest thing, and we've been talking about this for a year, is building your community.
Absolutely.
Because if you think about it, say you've mastered one skill, you got people in your community now that may have something else mastered. And it's only going to make you guys, your community, your group, whatever you want to call it, it's going to make you stronger because of it.
The more diverse you can be, the stronger you're going to be as a team.
But that's really it. I mean, it all boils down to your community, building that community. Create that outreach, reach out to people not necessarily, and they don't necessarily have to be like-minded, because everybody's going to be a little bit different. They're going to have different opinions on things, which is great. That's what makes us who we are. That's the biggest thing. It's the community. Everything is going to revolve around that community. I'm going to be posting some stuff up on our Facebook group here the next couple of days, kind of doing a poll, get an idea, put some feelers out. Like I said, Mark and I, we're working some stuff in the background, but we're going to wind up putting some stuff on Facebook to get a feel for it, gauge you guys. So by all means, please, if you're in the Facebook group, we'd love your feedback. If you're listening and you're not part of our Facebook group, go look up the What If Tomorrow podcast group on Facebook. Shameless plug. My wife and I, our other channel is The Night Acres. We're talking about our personal journey here on our little farm, if you want to call it that, and kind of watch us stumble and make mistakes and learn out here. And there's also a group for that. It's the Night Acres community on Facebook. We're still getting there. Definitely, we would love your feedback in both aspects. This show, and keep an eye out on YouTube and Rumble. By the way, I mean, we're on Rumble as well, and we're looking at possibly going to Twitch.
Yeah, I'm going to start looking at that this week, possibly setting us up an account.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to diversify a little bit more, but we're looking at going to Twitch. Like I said, that'll put us on Twitch, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, all that. Four. Yep. So if you would rather see us on Twitch, by all means, tell us. Let us know. If you want to email us, whatiftomorrowpc@gmail.com. Message us, what have you. I think that about does it, Mark. I don't know if you got anything.
I really don't have anything right now. Remember to like, comment, and share on the Facebook groups. That helps us. And
absolutely does.
the more support we have, the better content we can find for you guys.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
do let us know if there's something you want us to talk about.
Yeah.
Both
Or
for
if there's
this-
something.
Both for
Oh, go ahead,
this
Mark,
and the
sorry.
other show. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Next week, we missed last week. I got so busy. I had to text Mark. I was like, man, we've got so much going on. We're trying to get some things finished up. And I texted him. I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it tonight. But next week, I think you said Pam will probably join us.
Yeah, and possibly Jess. We're going to talk about the Silurian hypothesis and several adjacent phenomenon.
My wife. She said, go subscribe to our YouTube channels as well. The Night Acres, the Night Acres. Type that in.
Get on there.
Our second video will probably be up. I'm figuring probably Wednesday night is what I'm shooting for. Maybe tomorrow night. I'm trying to figure out a good time. We're still trying to schedule all that and work around us. But yeah, if there's some things you want to see us do on the channel, on the YouTube channel here, What If Tomorrow Media on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook or Rumble, go over, like, subscribe, all that good stuff too. But if there's some things you want us to do, if you want to, I don't know, maybe get in some bushcraft or different little things like that we can work on and learn and all that, let us know.
It'd probably be really entertaining to watch me camp and fail.
I don't know that I want to camp. I mean, if I want to camp anymore, I'm going to find a camper.
I'll be like a turtle. Help.
I mean, if I do camp, I'll probably do it out here at my place and hang out until dark, kind of like do the whole Bear Grylls thing, set that up. I'm going to go in and go to bed. And then I'll come out in the morning and say, oh man, what a night. My back.
Man, I love it. I'll have to try that.
Yeah. My wife, she's talking about, have you heard of this electroculture?
No, I have not.
It's this new thing. It's like blowing up everywhere. It's about using the ether, almost along the lines of Tesla's ideas of electricity and all that. But it's supposed to help your plants in your garden grow better. So I think we've got the stuff to do it. We just haven't made the coils and stuff and the antennas, because you make it's something about the higher your antenna, the more natural electricity and stuff will help your plants or whatever. I don't know the theory behind it. 100%.
The same theory as connecting yourself to the ground by not wearing your shoes. Okay,
right. It's kind of like grounding.
I kind of got an idea for that then.
So we might do that and just run an experiment in the garden and see what plants kind of work better. Or, see if it works.
And you could run that off solar.
Yeah. Well, you don't even add power to it.
It was more of a static thing.
Yeah. You draw the power, the ions and stuff from the ether or nature.
From the air.
And apparently this copper wire grounds it and sends it into your ground around your plants. It's kind of interesting. I've checked into. I think Willie posted something here a while back on it on the Band of Bearded Brothers channel or on their group over on Facebook.
Well, color me intrigued. I definitely want to hear more about this.
It's pretty neat because I started looking into it. I was like, oh, heck, we'll try it. And we spent like what, $10-15 bucks for a roll of copper wire. We'll try it out and see what it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that we're talking about doing an experiment on and just kind of seeing how things go.
I like it.
You see videos of people debunking it, and you see people also, that are supposedly it's working great for them. So we'll run our own experiment and see. So,
do it with scientific method. Do a control group and an experimental group in the same environment and see what happens.
Yep, that's the plan.
So
we'll try it out. But anyway, folks, check us out. Keep an eye out for YouTube. We'll be posting it to the group in Facebook. our new videos, stuff like that. And also, check my wife and I's channel out if you would, please. We would appreciate your support over there. It's a little bit different. It's kind of along the same lines, but you're going to see a lot of what's going on here on our homestead, I guess you could say. But with that being said, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you guys for joining the chat with us. We love it when you guys join us. And we'll catch you next episode.
Good night, folks.